Dude, have you guys tried these pops? It's like the Aldi brand of like Poppy or like Olipop. They're so good and they're like significantly cheaper. It's called Pops. But I just wanted to put you guys on really quick because I love my Poppy and my Olipop, but like my pockets don't. So shout out Aldi for always having the dupes. But yeah, these are bussin'. Really bussin'. Anyways. So, if you have made it to episode 6, as always, thank you so much for your love and support thus far. I'm sorry that I'm late this week. Number 1, I'm sick. So if you can't already hear it in my voice, I have been sick. So I've been trying to recover from that. And I apologize. My voice might not be as soothing this week because I have a really scratchy throat. I also have been doing a deep dive just kind of like into the documents and, piecing everything together because I am going to be dropping an episode later on for my brother specifically and just telling the ins and outs of the story from beginning to end because I know that you guys are along for the ride for my story and like everyone's interested in my healing journey. And I think that's important. But I also think that it's important for people to understand the weight of what actually happened. Because there's too many people who believe that it's like this minimized situation that it wasn't. And I think that it needs to be heard. And I think that he needs to be held accountable. And when I started this journey, I was going to hide the names. I was going to, be as respectful to everybody as I possibly could. But the more that I read into the reports and the more insight I get on how things played out, the less that I give a fuck to spare anybody, if I'm being frank. So, if anyone feels like this is ruining their life, it's not. I'm not. I mean, it might be, but I'm not ruining your life, right? Your choices and your actions are ruining your life or ruined your life. That's not on me. So I want to make that clear. Not that any of you guys watching are those people, but I know there are some people who are watching and they don't like them doing this, and I don't care. So I want to look directly in the camera and say that. I don't care. At the end of the day, anyone who doesn't like this, it's likely because they're defending the behavior of the person who the story's about, right? So I don't care. I've said it before, I'll say it again. If I had it my way, he'd be back in prison. So I don't care. If you're guilty by association, that's your problem. Not mine. You choose to be associated. So once again, I mean, we can paint Allegra to be the bad guy all we want. The bad guy is the man who did this, right? The bad guy is the justice system. The bad guy is not me. And, with a very clear head, I can say that because as I'm taking all of this in and speaking with my therapist throughout this journey, I see things very clearly for what they are. And, the black sheep of the family is usually the goat. But when you're the goat, you also become the scapegoat. And that is something that somebody just said to me recently that, like, is going to sit with me forever. But it's so true. So I'll be the villain in your guys' story if you want. Because guess what? At the end of the day, I'm the hero in Reese's. I'm speaking up and I'm doing what everybody should have done when it happened. So with that, diving into this episode, we're just going to kind of discuss the dynamics after my mom got out. I know we ended on that last episode. The reading in this episode is going to be a little bit shorter because I feel like there's so many things that I want to touch on in the debrief that I wanted to allow myself more time to yap. And y'all know once I get to yapping, like it could get lengthy. So the reading is a little bit shorter this time, but that is because I have some stuff that I want to touch on in this particular episode more than in the others. So Once again, thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you guys for caring enough to listen. Thank you guys for those of you that found me from TikTok. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for being invested. Thank you for helping me get my brother's story heard. I'm very blessed. And what I can say is that the levels that I've been able to take this to through social media is astonishing. It's amazing that, times have changed to put us in a space where we can utilize our platform and it can make a difference. And I'm blessed that I started speaking out and people have joined me. And it just goes to show that your voice is power. And I made a TikTok about that, and I'll actually insert it for those of you who are interested in seeing it. But my brother's story has reached all over the world. And that brings tears to my eyes because, I was talking to somebody and she was like, your brother's probably up there like, fucking finally somebody's speaking up for me. And just hearing that and like having to think about him as a little boy, and we just let the story die. And it's been 22 years that he's been gone, and nobody knows what happened to him. And that changes today. So I just want to thank everybody for the support that I've been receiving. I'm very grateful and I'm very blessed. And, I know my brother is looking down here like, wow. So many people have heard my name. So many people are using their voice for me. And that makes me so happy. So let's dive into episode 6. Betrayal is a funny thing. It almost always comes from the people you least expect. Except for me. I always expect it. It still hurts, but it never surprises me. See, I've learned something about people. I love them for who they are, which means I see them for who they are. Even when they don't fully see themselves, the good and the bad, I do. That's the perk of my trauma. I pay attention to everything. I get to know someone to their core just by watching, analyzing, piecing together the things they don't even say out loud. And because of that, when someone betrays me, it doesn't catch me off guard. It just confirms what I already knew about them. But no matter how much I saw it coming, nothing prepared me for my mom's betrayal. I think enduring so much has done 2 things to me. 1, it made me hyper aware. I see people clearly, even when I don't want to. And number 2, it made me understanding, almost to a fault. Because I've been put through hell, I tend to rationalize other people's behavior. I tell myself they've probably been through things too. Maybe they don't know how to process it. Maybe that's why they act the way that they do. But here's the truth. Life is about choices. You can choose to unpack your trauma, to heal, to move forward, or you can choose to let it fester, let it consume you, to continue the cycle, and to hurt people who didn't hurt you. And the truth is, far too many people are bleeding on those who never cut them. That realization hit me like a gut punch when I found out my mother was still speaking to the man that killed my brother. After everything, after all the pain, she still chose him. That's the thing about betrayal. It's not always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. It's the phone call you were never supposed to hear. It's the choices people make when they think that you won't find out. It's knowing deep down that someone you love will always choose what hurts you over what protects you. But here's what I need you to hear. Just because you understand someone's pain doesn't mean you have to tolerate the way that they treat you. Their inability to process their emotions, not your burden to bear. Their lack of emotional maturity, not your burden to bear. Their wounds, their damage, their choices, not yours to carry. I used to think that if I could just empathize enough, if I could just understand enough, I could justify staying in situations that hurt me. But healing is a choice. one you have to make every single day. And if someone chooses not to heal, if they choose to keep hurting the people around them, that's on them. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. You don't have to drown just because someone you love refuses to learn how to swim. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. And nothing has forced me to accept that more than my own mother. If you haven't already pieced this together, she's on the phone with Everett. Yeah. I didn't even have enough time to enjoy having my mom back home with us before the trauma resurfaced. I must have been 10 years old, maybe younger. I just remember running out of her room straight to mine, trying to distract myself from what I had just heard, trying to unhear it, trying to convince myself that it wasn't real. But it was. A few minutes later, I heard her creeping up the stairs. She stepped in my room. And even though I can't remember exactly what she said, I remember how it felt. The way she minimized it. Brushed it off like it was nothing. Like, oh, we don't talk all the time. As if that made it okay. As if this was something I didn't need to worry about. But I knew better. My mom, the woman who had lost her son at the hands of this man, was lying to me. Maybe even lying to herself. Telling me that it was nothing so she could believe it too. Because if she admitted that it was something, she'd have to hold herself accountable. She'd have to stop. And deep down, I think she knew what was going on too. But at the end of the day, I was just collateral. Because of course, this escalated into something. It always does. She started an ongoing phone relationship with him. And as if I hadn't endured enough tension for a lifetime in my little 10 years of life, it was time to buckle up for a few more. The danger wasn't as immediate this time, not as terrifying, but the weight of it still pressed down on me. Another wave of chaos, another war zone I had no choice but to exist in. When do I ever get a break? The answer? Never. At first, the tension was between my mom and my grandma. My grandma, fierce, protective, unwilling to stomach what my mom was doing, made it very clear that she did not approve. No one in the family did. How could we? How could anyone? But I was just a kid who, despite everything, still loved my mom so much, and yet all I could think was, what the fuck is she doing? At first, I did what I had always done. I ignored it. After the first phone call, I pushed it down, focused on being a kid and surviving in the ways I knew how. But as time went on, and I overheard my grandma's frustration turning into fury, something inside me started to shift. I started to get angry too. I thought about it for days, turned it over in my head. What am I going to say to her? How do you even begin to confront your own mother when you're 10 years old and she's making choices that you know are destroying you? Destroying her. Finally, I had it. I waited until the moment was right, or at least as right as it could be. I walked by her room. She's on the phone with him. The sound of her voice made my skin crawl. My stomach twisted into knots, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. And I decided I was going to say something. I waited until she hung up. The second the conversation ended, I marched into her room. I don't remember exactly what I said, but I remember how desperate I felt. I remember sobbing, begging her to stop talking to him, begging her not to choose him, begging her to choose me. I remember the way she looked at me, the way her voice stayed steady cold, like my pain was just noise. Showing that I was a child. I couldn't understand. That she loved him. That I needed to stay in a child's place. I want to go off this, which I know I never do, but something just popped in my head and I want to speak on that. I just think it's so ironic, like, stay in a child's place, but, like, you had no problem, like, keeping me in an adult's place when I had to see things that no child should have to see. When you're letting your boyfriend deal drugs out of your house, like, there's, like, stay in a child's place, but I already made you grow up too fast because of the trauma you had to endure. Like, that's comedy. Anyways. And just like that, my pleas, my pain, my existence meant nothing. He was more important. Even then. Something in me broke that day. The way that I saw her, the way that I saw the world, shattered. For those of you who watch me through different stages of my life, so many things about me are about to make so much more sense. When you're a kid, you don't know what gaslighting is. You don't have control over anything. You're just forced to deal with it. Forced to exist in situations that make no sense. Forced to swallow pain you don't even have the words for yet. But I want you to really think about what that felt like for me. I was 10. I was trying to process how my own mother could be in a relationship with a man I had watched hurt her, physically, emotionally, mentally. A man who took the life of her child. How do you even begin to understand that at 10 years old? It was like the universe was playing some sick joke on me. I finally had my mom back, but she wasn't her. She wasn't the person I saw her as. And then she looked me in my eyes, listened to me sobbing, begging, pleading, and she told me in her own way that none of it mattered. That despite the fact this was shattering my little world, she was going to keep doing it anyway. And that's the moment that everything shifted. Now looking at it as a woman, as a mother, as an adult, it's far worse than the 10-year-old me could even comprehend, because now I see it clearly. I see it through the eyes of someone who never put their own child through that kind of pain. In her eyes, I was just a kid who didn't like her boyfriend. It's my life, not your business. Yeah, that might make sense if this was some regular man. Some guy that I just didn't like because I was being territorial over my mother. But that wasn't the case. She couldn't, or refused to see, the situation for what it was. To sit there while your child is screaming, crying, breaking, begging you to stop talking to not just your own abuser, but hers. Not just your abuser, but your son's murderer. And you have no regard for how this is destroying her. To watch your daughter's heart break in front of you and still choose him. It's sinister. What makes it even worse? Let's feed into the delusion for a second. Let's say she truly believed this was love. That somehow what she felt for him was more important than her love for me. He was in prison. This wasn't even a real relationship. It was phone calls, letters, a fantasy that wasn't even fully attainable. And that was even still more important than me. I spent my whole life trying to understand how it even got this far. How as a mother you could know a man was using physical discipline on your children. Children that weren't even his. And still stay. And still choose him. But I'm mature enough now to understand what a toxic relationship does to you. It makes you delusional. It makes you blind to the things that should make you run. But even knowing that, even understanding how deep manipulation can go, you'd think that murdering your child would be the wake-up call. It wasn't. Nothing was ever enough. Not being cheated on, not being abandoned during pregnancy because he swore the baby wasn't his. Not him getting another woman pregnant just 6 months before you. Not him beating on you, not him beating on your kids. You should have left, but you chose. You chose Emery Martin. I'm done. I'm done sparing people. I'm done hiding behind fake names because nobody ever cared to spare me. And no one, certainly no one, cared to spare Reece. At this point, all my bridges are burned anyway. So I might as well throw gasoline on that bitch. My mother stood by this man for the entire 12 to 13 years he served for murdering her child. And how did he repay her? He got out and cheated on her immediately. Continues to, actually. And to the other one, because I know that you're watching, you're just as pathetic as my mom. You know what he did. You know what kind of monster he is. And yet, you stay too. Both of you. Giving him a place to run when the other one is fed up, back and forth, like he's not supposed to be rotting in a prison cell. This man is a clown, a waste of space, a pathetic excuse for a human being who preys on weak women because he knows they'll never make him face real consequences. And I've had to watch this play out for the last 20 years of my life. I take responsibility for my own choices, but when your brain is hardwired to accept that the bar is in hell, when you have never once in your life seen an example of a healthy relationship, it definitely sets you back. The things that set off alarm bells in other people when they're in an unhealthy situation, yeah, they don't go off for me. Well, at least they didn't. Not for a long time. I had to teach myself that, rewire my own brain. And the worst part, I had to endure certain things just to even realize how wrong it was. And I'll be honest. My mom staying broke me worse than the actual situation did. I became a pawn in her life. Someone she only pulled close when she needed a distraction from the toxicity she refused to escape. It was a roller coaster of, she's finally leaving him for good. Promises of just that. Only for them to be broken again and again and again. I compare it to having a parent with an addiction. 1 second they're clean, and then you notice by their behavior and patterns that they're using again. Same thing here. I accepted my fate, that I wasn't enough. None of us were. That much was obvious when he took my brother's life and she stayed. But something about the years of begging and pleading as her daughter, only to be disregarded, did something to me. It awakened a rage that to this day I'm not proud that I have in me. It skewed my view on trust, on relationships. It taught me that begging for someone to love me properly was normal. Because for years, I watched her do it with him, and I was doing it with her. It also made me hyper defensive. I felt like intimidating people or defending myself at all costs or standing up for others was the only way to gain control. Control that I never had in my life. It made me feel good to make a bully feel bullied because in my world, that was my way of making up for never being able to stand up for the bully in my own home. So I lashed out. I made sure people knew that I wasn't the one to fuck with. And if you know me, you know how true this is. The fights that I was in, the drama I entertained, some of you guys watching probably even have been caught in my wrath a time or two. It's funny now, but it's sad. Sad to think about the literal child just trying to do whatever she could to quiet demons that her own mother didn't even care to help her fight. Because instead of helping me fight the demon, she was dating him. For a while, my grandma lived with us. After my mom got out, it wasn't permanent, just a temporary blur of adjustment, tension, and unspoken battles until eventually we got a house of our own. But before that, there was always this power struggle between them. My grandma had been raising us for 4 years. 4 years of making the decisions, calling the shots, being the only real sense of stability we had. So when my mom came back, she wasn't ready to hand over the parenting power. And my mom, just getting home, trying to force her way back into this fractured version of normal, wanted control. It put me in a tough space. One would say one thing, the other would say another, and if I listened to the wrong one, I was in trouble. If I tried to please them both, I was stuck in the middle. Confusing doesn't even begin to describe it. But one thing about having my grandma around, she validated me. I wasn't crazy for feeling this way. I wasn't wrong for thinking that my mom talking to Emery was a betrayal. I saw the anger in my grandma's eyes every time she found out they were still in contact. We had countless talks about it. Talks that helped me process the weight of it all. Talks that in some small way kept me grounded. But there was another power struggle, one between me and my mom. I was 12 when we had one of our worst arguments. She wanted me to go to church. The entire 4 years she was gone, we didn't go to church, not once. But suddenly, now that she was home, she expected us to go. I refused, and we fought. I was so angry, angrier than I had ever been. And it wasn't about church, it's about the principle. You disappear for 4 years, and then you come home, demand control. You try to take our... You disappear for 4 years, and then come home and demand control. You try to take over our lives, force us to do things we never did before. It was weird. It wasn't about faith, it was about image. Because suddenly she was all religious at once. She came home and decided we couldn't celebrate Halloween anymore because it was ungodly. But somehow being on the phone with the literal devil every night is fine. Where's the logic? Hiding behind God wasn't going to save her from the demon she refused to fight. Hell, she wasn't even fighting them, she was dating one of them. Because he had changed. because he had found God. He's a fraud. Anyone capable of doing what he did to a child worships no one but himself. And the Bible, the same one she twisted to justify herself, was clear on what God thinks of men like him. There are 6 things the Lord hates, 7 that are detestable to him. And number 3 is hands that shed innocent blood. Proverbs 6:16. If anyone causes one of these little ones to stumble, it would be better for them to have a large millstone hung around their neck and be drowned in the depths of the sea. Matthew 18:6. Jesus' own words, saying that harming a child is so evil that you'd be better off drowning than facing the judgment that awaits you. And I can't wait for the day Emery faces his. But my mother, she would use but my mother, she would use God forgives as a weapon, a way to gaslight me into thinking that her forgiving this man was normal. It was never about church. It was always about the principle. She was using God's word to twist reality, to justify her choices. And let's be real, on Sundays I wanted to sleep in, not watch her pretend to be a good person. And in that argument I snapped. I was so angry, so fed up, I looked her dead in the face and said, I want you to go back to prison. And I'll never forget that, because that was the only time my mom ever hit me. She slapped me across the face. All this anger, all this fight, all this rage, to stand up to me, a 12-year-old. But never to him. Never to a man who abused her. Never to a man who abused her children. Never to the man who murdered her son. After it happened, I went to my grandma. I didn't even have to explain why I lashed out. She already understood. It wasn't about church. It was about the principle. She always understood. I remember hearing her argue with my mom about it afterwards. I don't know exactly what was said, but I know my grandma wasn't happy. She always had my back then. Just when I thought I had one safe place left, we were moving. A new house, a new school, a new reality. And as if my life already hadn't been flipped upside down a million times, my mom decided to rip me away from everything familiar. I was a sophomore in high school, the age where your friends feel like your whole world. And just like that, I had to leave them behind. Another adjustment, another upheaval. A reminder that nothing in my life ever stayed still long enough for me to feel safe in it. The only thing that softened the blow, my grandma got an apartment in the same city. At least she wasn't completely gone. At least I still had one person in my corner. Moving into this new house with my mom, without my grandma, without my safety net, was the beginning of one of the darkest, trying eras of my teenage life. A chapter filled with isolation, chaos, betrayals I never saw coming. But we'll unpack that next time. There's so many things that I want to talk about in this one. First of all, I want to touch on the fact that, like, the whole religion thing. Like, my mom being the way that she was, like, holier than thou, and then, like, me knowing what she was doing behind the scenes has always made me so confused around my faith, right? Because I'm like, we're going to church, like, I see what she's doing, how she is, like, and then we're at church, and I'm just like, and she would always be like, well, God would want you to forgive, like, God forgives, and, you know, it put me in a space where I was confused by my relationship with God, because I'm like, well, why would God ever condone behavior like that? And obviously, like, my only guidance in life was her, so she was never going to give me the real. And I think that's what is so hard is, like, my grandma obviously shared my anger around the situation, but I didn't have anybody really besides, like, some family to really, like, acknowledge how fucked up it was. Like, you're telling me, a 12-year-old, like, you need to forgive the man that killed your brother because God wants you to forgive. Like, how twisted is that? Like, I just think about so many things now as an adult, and I'm just like, wow. Just wow. Like, I could never imagine my child coming to me in fear, like, please stop talking to him. Why are you talking to him? Like, and me just being like, it's my life. And I mean, it was blatant. She didn't even care to hide it, like, to even pretend like it wasn't happening. Like, I just had to accept it. And when I talk about how, like, I became this person that felt like I needed to bully the bully, like, literally. Like, if you know me in high school, you know, like, if you pissed me off, oh, I was going to try to fight you. Or if I felt like you were bullying somebody smaller than you, oh, I was going to try to fight you, because that was my way of gaining control back. And I want to make some things clear. Like, that was the era that obviously I needed to experience. Violence obviously isn't the answer, right? But at the end of the day, like, it was my way of trying to gain back my power. Like, when you're a child and you're so powerless in your home, and, you know, you have felt like you've had no one to protect you, you become the protector. So for me, I don't know. And, like, that's something that I didn't even realize when I was a kid, or, like, how defensive that I get with certain people and certain things. And I want to make something clear too. When I touch on, like, my toxic relationships, I am not talking about my children's father. Like, I have nothing but the utmost respect for Anthony, and he has been, like, supporting me on this journey. Like, if you watch my bloopers video, like, he was in the background fucking around because it's all he does, but he's been supporting me through this. And, you know, we don't always see eye to eye, obviously, but he's a great friend of mine. Like, we try to maintain a good relationship. So when I speak on these toxic situations where I was being mistreated, I'm not talking about him. Like, I want to make that clear. He has never disrespected me. He's never cheated on me. Point is that wasn't a toxic situation. If anyone was toxic in that relationship, it was me, right? Because all the things that you guys are hearing me unpack, I didn't unpack when we were together. So I'm seeing things from a different perspective, and not to say he's completely innocent in us breaking up. Obviously, there's reasons that, you know, I'm not gonna blast it on here. It's not relevant, but I do want to clear his name, because I get messages like, are you talking about Anthony? Like, no, Anthony has been nothing but supportive. Anthony has always been supportive of me. He's never even, like, raised his voice at me for real, or even called me out of my name. So any of that, like, mistreatment, or, like, I did not experience that from my children's father. I want to just make that very clear, because I did have somebody ask me that. I also wanted to touch on, like, the fact that Emery does cheat on my mom, and I find it fucking crazy that there are women out there who, like, don't literally Google him and are like, never mind. Like, the fact that he still even gets women near him, like, baffles my fucking mind. And the fact that women know about what he did and they're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna hop in bed with you. You're a sick bitch. Like, he's a sick bitch. You're a sick bitch. Like, anyone that's even, like, trying to minimize this into something smaller than what it is, you're a sick bitch. Like, and I am going to be doing a video, like I said, where I'm going to share with you guys everything he did, because it needs to be known. And I know I keep talking about this, but it's just, like, for me, I'm okay. I'm okay with being the odd one out. If being the odd one out means I'm the only person who's gonna, like, stand up to somebody who likes to bully women and children, fine. I'll be the bad guy. Like, that's one thing about me, is that when I was touching on me as a teenager, when I said, you know, I used to be the tough guy, I felt like that was me getting my control back. Oh, I'm so happy that I went through that era, because I don't tolerate anything now. Like, although it probably wasn't the correct way to handle things when I was young, it definitely put some fight in me that I didn't have when I was a little girl. If you ask people about me when I was a little girl, I was a little docile people pleaser, and now I'm not. So, and when I said the bridges are burned, so let's put some gasoline on that bitch, yeah, like, and I mean it. And I guess that's the good thing about going through so many things, is that, like, I've been through so many things, and I've had to navigate so much alone, because, you know, the person that I had to look up to, her viewpoint is so skewed that I've had to process so many things on my own, that, like, I'm at a space in my life where I'm like, I literally don't need anybody but my kids. Like, I literally don't need anybody but my kids. So although it's sad thinking about, like, being that little girl or being that teenager and just feeling so lost, it essentially catapulted me into clarity now that I'm an adult. And That's why everything happens for a reason. And when I was reading, this is insane. When I was reading this episode just now, I read a part, and I wish I knew what sentence it was, but it gave me deja vu, and it was like deja vu from like when I was a little girl. Call me crazy, but I'm serious. Like, I'm so serious. Like, so I don't know. All of this to say that like everything happens for a reason. You know, I could sit here and cry about the hand that life has dealt me, or I can turn it into something, which is what I'm doing. Like, that's the whole point of this. Like, I'm turning my sad story into a success story. I'm changing the end of Reece's story into a story that inspires other people. Like, that's the point. That's the purpose. And, you know, this journey has taught me a lot about myself and a lot about other people. And like I was speaking on Betrayal, like that was so just like bars, like, like literally, because it's like for me, I see, because I pay attention to because I'm like always like, oh, this person's gonna fuck me over, blah blah, because I've been fucked over my whole life, obviously by my own parents, right? So for me, I always have that like, I'll be cool, but I don't trust you. And it's so true, because I see stuff in people before they even see it in themselves. And so when somebody betrays me, it's never a shock. It might hurt me, but I'm not surprised, because I saw that in you before you displayed it yourself. So all of this to say that, like, once again, everything happens for a reason. And I also want to touch on, just don't get it. I just don't get being a mother and being able to look your child in the face, like crying, and be like, this is breaking your heart, sorry. Like, I just don't understand. I'll never understand. And I look at my kids and I'm like, I couldn't. And like I said, it'd be different if it was just like a random guy and I'm like, oh, I don't like you because I don't want you around my mom. Like, no, this is not that. I literally saw him punch on you. I literally saw him punch on my brothers. And people seem to forget that I remember things, right? So I can't be gaslit into that never happened, because yes, the fuck it did. I was there. Like, I was there. You know, other people lived through it too. My story seems to corroborate with theirs. Like, so it's like I was there. Like, we can sit here and like pretend to see things differently all we want, but like, I know the reality of the situation. I lived it. I remember hearing him take both my brothers into the room and they're both pleading and screaming. I remember it being a thing with my brother having accidents, not Reece, my other brother, and he would take him into the room and beat him because he was having accidents. And I want to remind you guys that both of these boys are special needs. Both of these boys are special needs. So you're telling me that an answer for a special needs child having accidents is to beat him. Perfect. And then as a mother, like, you're letting that happen. Perfect. Like, and you signed a paper stating that I'm not going to let him use physical discipline, and he signed a paper too, and then guess what? Reece died a couple weeks later. Like, it's fucking pathetic. It's fucking pathetic. And I sit here all the time, and I can sit here and I can be sad that, like, that's who my mother is, and I can sit here and I can be sad that my dad's a deadbeat, but I'm not sad. I'm mad. And that's the thing about healing, is that it's not linear. You are allowed to be mad. I just talked to my therapist about this last week, and she's like, Allegra, you are allowed to feel anger. And I do. I'm pissed off. I'm pissed off that every single person around did not raise holy fucking hell for that little boy. And especially because I've read the reports, I've read the autopsy. Like, the fact that you guys can see that, right, and we're not raising holy fucking hell infuriates me. It really does. It really infuriates me. So, you know, I've had to address several times now my motives. Oh, she's doing this for money. She's doing this for monetization. She's doing this because she wants revenge. Yes, I do. You're right. I do want revenge. I want revenge on the person who brutally murdered my brother. Yes, I want his life ruined, because he shouldn't have a life anyway. My brother doesn't. Why does he get to have a life? Like, nope. Not. Listen, as far as I'm concerned, and as long as I live, you're going to be uncomfortable stepping outside. And I don't know if he watches or what, but if you do, I'm going to look you right dead in the face, because my mom might be scared of you, and you might have had me scared at 5, but not today. So I want you to be uncomfortable when you leave the house. I want everyone to know your name. I want your freedom to feel not free. And I'm going to make sure that happens. And if you are watching, go check out how many people on my TikTok know who you are. Because if you're not feeling uneasy today, you will be tomorrow. And I promise you that. And as far as my mom is concerned, yeah, like, as a mother, I can't. And, you know, I'm sure she feels like I'm ruining her life. I'm not. The decision to stand by somebody who took your son's life is what's ruining your life. Your decisions is what's ruining your life, not mine. So, and that's something that I've struggled with. I feel like I haven't really spoke on my mom. I've touched on it. I haven't gotten deep with it until really this episode. And I was sparing her. I think about my mom and I feel sad and I feel guilt. And I see her as a victim, and it makes me sad. It does. It makes me sad. It does. I've tried 20 years of trying to mend the relationship with her, and it just got to a point where it was harming me more than it was helping me, because, like I said, it's so similar to having an addict parent, where it's like, I'm like, oh my God, yay, she's clean, like, we can be normal again, like, I can have a relationship with her, and, you know, then she relapses. And so now I'm on the back burner because her entire universe revolves around him. And I'll get into it more because, like I said, I want to stay on the timeline of, like, letting you guys see how everything plays out, like, in chronological order. So I'm touching on how I feel right now today, but I don't want to, like, talk about things that happened as an adult until we get to that part of the story so you guys aren't confused. But what I will say is that I put 20 years of trying with her. Like, I really wanted a relationship with my mom. I love my mom. And so I've been harboring a lot of guilt speaking out on this. But then in collaboration with my therapist, as well as, like, with myself and talking to other people. And it's like, the bottom line is that, like, these are her choices. And when you make choices, there's consequences in making those choices. And I don't want to get revenge on my mom, but I do think that you're just as guilty. You let it happen. And then letting it happen, even I think that I would even be like, okay, it happened. She was in a fucked up, toxic, abusive relationship. I'm sure she was manipulated. It happened. And she lost her son. It's tragic. I think that if it stopped there, that's how I would see it. I would see it as she was a victim. But it's like, now we're 20 years in, and you've endured even more than just him murdering your child. He's cheated. He's talked to you crazy. He's talked to me fucking crazy in front of her. Like, you've endured so much, and it's caused so much damage, and every time it damages our relationship, and, like, you're choosing to be in it. So it's like, I harbored this guilt when I first started doing this that, like, I'm now letting go of, because it's like, if you can't see that your choices led you here, you're never gonna see it. And, you know, for me, it's sad because I have to kind of, like, lay the dream of having a good relationship with my mom to rest. But for my mental health, I have to. Like, it's just, I cannot get on the roller coaster anymore. And it is sad, and it does suck. And, you know, I would love to have a normal relationship with my mom, and I don't have a dad either. So, like, I'm just kind of out here an orphan. If anybody wants to adopt me, please. Thank you. But I have to laugh or I'll cry. So if you guys see me, like, joking in the middle of, like, traumatic stuff, it's, like, that's my trauma response. Like, everything is a joke to me. But, yeah, so, you know, I don't, like, want things to be this way, contrary to popular belief. Like, this is not how I wanted things to be, but this is how they are. And my brother deserves more than what he got from everyone involved. So, you know, someone's got to stand up for him. Somebody's got to make sure his story is heard, and someone's got to bully that bully. I'm here to do it. So, that's all I have for episode 6. Thank you guys for tuning in. Please leave your questions in the comments. I didn't have questions this time to answer, which is why I just rambled for however fucking long that was. But if you guys want to leave me some questions, I'll answer them in episode 7. And then once again, look out for the episode that I'm going to do around my brother's case. I'm going to be sharing everything with you guys. That will probably be dropping later on. So just keep your eye out for that. And once again, don't forget to like and comment and subscribe. Leave me your feedback. A lot of you guys message me, which I love, but like drop it in the comments. The engagement is what's going to help push the video out. And, this, I think what people fail to realize is that I'm finding out a lot of things in real time, which is why my emotions change. Like my want to spare my mom has changed as I find out more and more that she allowed, as I find out, how things played out. It's shifting things in me. So, the goal from the beginning was to heal and tell my story and tell Reese's story. But it's bigger than that now. Like, I want my brother's name to be heard globally. I want Emery's name to be heard globally. Like, my brother deserves that. There's no reason as to why this man should be walking free. And so the mission has shifted a little bit. I mean, the mission is still heal with you guys, be on my healing journey, tell my story and tell Reese's story. But the mission is also getting justice for him and whatever that may be. If justice means that everyone on the earth knows who he is and what he did and he's scared to leave the house, I'm good with that. If justice is that I file with the DOJ and they reopen the case due to the negligence that you guys will all hear about in my next video, which is going to be Yaps, Reece's story. But yeah, when you guys see the discrepancies that I'm speaking of and the DOJ, if they choose to investigate that, which once again, that's going to take a lot of pressure from the media, which is why I'm hammering down on please like, comment, share. I need you guys to stand behind me if I am going to pursue legal action, which is filing with the DOJ. They are very slow. And unless there is pressure from the media, we won't hear anything for years. So in the meantime, I'm going to make him uncomfortable, like I said. And, if it goes to the DOJ and they do deem it negligent, then, So with that, your engagement is important. Your support is important. It's for a larger cause than even just me. So I want to thank you guys, as always, for tuning in. And I'll see you next week. And hopefully next week it won't be late. I'm very sorry. But I love you guys. Bye.